Professor Krell's thin lips stretched back in what passed for a smile among his kind, though it would have prompted most galactic inhabitants to flee. The expression exposed 3 rows of flawlessly aligned, translucent teeth that shimmered under the Academy's stark illumination. His 4 eyes, 2 large, primary ones and 2 smaller, secondary ones positioned above, scanned the classroom of 23 elite military cadets, representing 17 diverse species from across the Galactic Confederation. "Welcome," he announced, his voice carrying that characteristic Vexillian warble, "to Advanced Combat Tactics and Survival, Course Code GMA-4733. He paused for effect, savoring the tense silence, or, as I prefer to call it, how not to die stupidly on your first real mission. A few hesitant chuckles rippled through the room. Cadet Nixera, a blue-skinned Thrillian known for her outspokenness, raised one of her 4 hands. "Professor, is it accurate that a human will be joining the instruction team this cycle?" The classroom immediately buzzed with whispers, clicks, and a variety of other communication sounds. Silence. Professor Krell didn't shout, he didn't need to. His voice simply amplified, permeating every corner of the room with undeniable authority. When he spoke again, his tone was deceptively amiable. "Yes, Cadet Nixera. Lieutenant Rodriguez of Earth will arrive tomorrow as part of our new exchange initiative. And no, despite any outlandish rumors circulating in your barracks, humans do not consume their instructors when dissatisfied with their grades. They just shoot them instead," Cadet Grath muttered, a stocky Pelgorian whose granite-like skin gave him a perpetually bored appearance. Krell's secondary eyes swiveled to focus on Grath while his primary pair remained fixed on his teaching notes. "Actually, Cadet, humans haven't shot an instructor in nearly 15 Earth years. Their educational discipline has improved marginally." The deadpan delivery left the class unsure whether to laugh or be terrified. Professor Krell moved around his hovering podium and gestured to the wall-sized tactical display behind him. It flickered to life. "I am displaying the schematics of the Academy's notorious training grounds, 50 kilometers of artificially constructed terrain featuring every lethal environment the Confederation has catalogued this year." Krell continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow remained perfectly audible. "You will be using new combat scenarios developed with Lieutenant Rodriguez's input. The human has ideas." The way he uttered ideas made it sound like a potentially terminal disease. Cadet Vine, a slender taxi whose exoskeleton glistened with decorative military markings, tapped her communication pad nervously. "Professor, my cousin trained with humans on Outpost Delta 9. She said their standard training is excessive." "Excessive?" Krell's membranes flickered across all 4 eyes in what passed for a Vexillian laugh. "Oh, that's rich coming from a species that requires 10 cycles of meditation before firing a simple plasma rifle." He gestured dismissively with one of his 6 limbs. "Cadet Vine, your cousin survived, didn't she?" "Yes, but..." "Then it wasn't excessive. It was exactly what was needed." Krell's secondary eyes narrowed. "And that, cadets, is the first lesson you'll learn in this course. The universe doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't care about your species' cultural sensitivities. It doesn't care if you think a training regimen is excessive." He paused, all 4 eyes focusing intently on his students. "Because when you're pinned down on some forgotten moon with hostiles closing in from 3 directions, the only thing that matters is whether your training prepared you enough to survive the next 30 seconds. The class fell into complete silence as the gravity of their chosen profession settled over them like a cold shroud. Krell's mouth stretched into that almost smile again. "Now, who's excited to meet our human tomorrow?" Not a single appendage was raised. The next morning, upon the arrival of human exchange instructor Lieutenant Rodriguez, the cadets filed into the classroom with unusual punctuality. Not a single seat remained empty when the chronometer reached 0800 hours. Professor Krell noted this with silent amusement as he stood at his podium, all 4 eyes focused on the entrance door. Well, nothing like the promise of a potentially dangerous alien to ensure perfect attendance," Krell remarked dryly. "I should invite humans more often." The door slid open precisely on the hour, and in walked disappointment. At least, that's what flashed across many of the cadets' faces. Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez stood approximately 170 centimeters tall, with copper-brown skin and black hair pulled back in a regulation knot. She wore the standard Earth Defense Force uniform, dark blue with minimal insignia.
No visible weapons, no extra limbs, not even a proper exoskeleton.
Just 2 arms, 2 legs, and a distinctly unimpressive appearance by Confederation standards.
That's it, whispered Cadet Grath, his stony features somehow conveying profound disappointment.
Where are the horns? The battle scars? The skulls of vanquished enemies? Professor Krell's secondary eyes rotated toward the muttering cadet.
Your xenoanthropology education is severely lacking, cadet. Humans don't have horns, though they do sometimes wear the skulls of enemies, but only on special occasions. His deadpan delivery made it impossible to tell if he was joking.
Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward, surveying the room with piercing dark eyes that seemed to assess each student in turn.
When she spoke, her voice was surprisingly melodious but carried unmistakable command presence.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez, Earth Defense Force, 7th Tactical Division, previously stationed on the Rigelian front.
She paused, a slight smile playing at her lips. And before anyone asks, no, I don't eat cadets who fail their exams.
That would violate at least 7 Confederation health codes.
A nervous ripple of laughter spread through the classroom.
Professor Krell stepped forward. Lieutenant Rodriguez has graciously agreed to share human combat methodology with our elite program. She will be co-instructing this course and has designed several exercises for your benefit.
Thank you, Professor.
Rodriguez nodded.
Let me be clear about something right from the start. I'm not here to prove humans are tougher than any of your species. I'm not here to humiliate you or break you, though some of you might feel that way by week's end. She began to pace slowly across the front of the room, her movements fluid and controlled. I'm here because humans have learned combat lessons the hard way, through blood and error and centuries of warfare against ourselves before we ever reach the stars.
Rodriguez stopped and looked directly at the class.
Various cultures developed incredible technologies, philosophies, and social structures while humans were still figuring out how to not die from simple infections. But when it comes to finding ways to survive against overwhelming odds, when it comes to improvising ways to keep fighting when everything's gone wrong.
Her smile tightened. That's where we've had a lot of practice.
She turned to Professor Krell with a nod.
Shall we begin?
In the initial classroom session where humans' training regimen is revealed, Lieutenant Rodriguez activated her datapad, and the classroom's holographic display flared to life. A 3-dimensional terrain map materialized in the center of the room, showing what appeared to be a series of obstacle courses, firing ranges, and various training zones. This, she said with casual confidence, is a standard human basic combat training facility on Earth.
We call it boot camp.
Every human soldier completes this before they're even considered for advanced training.
Cadet Nixera tilted her blue-skinned head.
It looks primitive. Rodriguez laughed, a genuine, warm sound that somehow made several cadets more nervous.
Oh, it is. Nothing fancy here.
No neural simulators, no consciousness backups, no anti-grav assists.
Just dirt, sweat, and a healthy dose of controlled suffering.
She tapped her datapad, and the image shifted to show human recruits crawling through mud beneath razor wire.
Professor Krell's secondary eyes widened slightly as he glanced at the display. Lieutenant, is that actual metal wire with physical cutting edges?
Yes, Professor. Old school, I know, but there's a method here.
Rodriguez expanded the image.
We found that the primitive nature of the obstacles creates psychological stress that can't be replicated in simulations. The fear of actual physical pain, even minor pain, forces recruits to make rapid threat assessments.
Cadet Vine raised a slender appendage. But Lieutenant, my species' exoskeleton would make such obstacles irrelevant. Excellent point.
Rodriguez nodded appreciatively. Which is why we'll be customizing the physical challenges for each of your physiologies.
The goal isn't the obstacle itself, it's the stress response.
She swiped her datapad again, and the display shifted to show human soldiers carrying heavy packs while running through what appeared to be torrential rain. This is a standard endurance march, 20 kilometers with 30 kilograms of equipment in the rain, uphill. She paused, both ways. A confused murmur passed through the class at this seemingly impossible topographical claim.
That was a joke, Rodriguez clarified with a wink. Human humor. You'll get used to it, or you'll go insane. Either way works for training purposes. Professor Krell made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Lieutenant, perhaps you could explain the reasoning behind such physically demanding training?
Any Confederation tactics rely on technological superiority and distance engagement.
Fair question. Rodriguez nodded. Let me show you why.
She tapped her data pad once more, and the display changed to battlefield footage. The scene showed soldiers in what appeared to be a desperate situation, outnumbered, outgunned, with equipment failures evident.
This is from the Battle of New Proxima. The 103rd Infantry was cut off when their dropship was shot down behind enemy lines. Their comms were jammed, advanced weapons systems offline, and they were outnumbered 8-1. She paused the footage. They survived for 72 hours before extraction. 87% survival rate. She looked around the suddenly silent classroom. Not because of superior technology, not because of tactical advantage, but because when everything went to hell, their bodies and minds had been conditioned to keep functioning under extreme stress. Rodriguez smiled, a predator's smile that made several cadets shift uncomfortably in their seats. And that's what we're going to teach you, how to keep fighting when all your fancy tech fails, when your battle plans collapse, when your body is screaming at you to stop. She switched off the display. We call this embracing the suck, and beginning tomorrow, you're all going to learn how to embrace it like it's your favorite thing in the universe. Cadet Grath's granite-like face actually paled. And humans consider this basic training? Oh, absolutely, Rodriguez replied cheerfully. The advanced stuff is where it gets interesting. The next morning, the cadets assembled at the Academy's training grounds for the first practical exercise that shocks alien students. The usual pristine simulation chambers had been replaced with something that looked like it had been dragged straight out of a primitive war zone: mud, actual mud, puddles of murky water, rough-hewn wooden structures. Even the air felt deliberately uncomfortable, humid and thick with organic scents that made several species' breathing apparatus flutter in distress. Lieutenant Rodriguez stood before them wearing what she called PT gear, simple gray shorts and a t-shirt with EDF stamped across the chest. No tech, no armor, not even proper footwear, just canvas shoes with rubber soles. Welcome to your first practical exercise, she announced with a cheerfulness that seemed entirely inappropriate given the surroundings. Today, we're starting with something simple, a warm-up, really. Professor Krell stood nearby, all four eyes blinking rapidly as he surveyed the transformed training ground. Lieutenant, I must note that several species here have never encountered natural mud before. Perfect learning opportunity, then, Rodriguez replied without missing a beat. Confederation forces don't always fight on nice, clean space stations. She gestured to the course behind her. This is what we call a confidence course, basic obstacles that will test your physical capabilities and decision-making under stress. You'll navigate through 12 stations in teams of 3. Cadet Nixera raised her hand. Lieutenant, what's the simulation parameter for injury? Rodriguez's smile widened. No simulation today, Cadet. If you fall, you'll actually feel it. Nothing permanently damaging, of course, but... She shrugged. Pain is an excellent teacher. A wave of concerned clicks, whistles, and subvocal rumbles swept through the assembled cadets. Are there not safety protocols? Asked Cadet Vine, her exoskeleton plates clicking together anxiously. The safety protocol is don't fail, Rodriguez replied, then she laughed. I'm kidding, mostly. Medical staff are standing by, and we've adjusted certain obstacles to accommodate physiological differences, but yes, you might get bruised, you might get scraped, you will definitely get dirty. She clapped her hands together. First team up, Grath, Nixera, and Tepkel. The three named cadets reluctantly stepped forward. Grath's stony features were impassive, Nixera's blue skin had taken on a distinctly paler hue, and Tepkel, a methane-breathing Vorish with 6 tentacular limbs, was visibly quivering. Your goal is simple, Rodriguez explained. Complete the course in under 15 minutes. Work together, communicate, adapt. She pointed to the first obstacle, a wall of rough wood nearly 3 m high with a single rope hanging down the center. Begin with the scaling wall. Go! What followed was nothing short of calamitous. Graf, despite his strength, couldn't grip the rope properly with his mineral-based hands. Nixera made it halfway up before freezing in panic when mud splattered across her sensory nodes. Tepkal, whose species had evolved in low-gravity environments, simply couldn't coordinate his tentacles to make upward progress against Earth's standard gravity. After 5 minutes of struggling, none had made it past the first obstacle. Rodriguez's encouraging smile never faltered. Reset. Try again, she called out. This time, think about your team's strengths. Who should go first? How can you help each other? From the sidelines, Professor Krell leaned toward Rodriguez. This is your idea of a simple warm-up? Yep, the lieutenant nodded, watching as the team finally started to coordinate their efforts. Absolutely. On Earth, we do this kind of thing for fun sometimes. Kids' birthday parties, corporate team-building exercises. She glanced at Krell with a grin. Wait until you see what we've planned for next week. Krell's membranes flickered across all 4 eyes. The Confederation Military Academy may need to reconsider its definition of advanced training. By the 3rd day of escalating challenges and alien students struggling, the Academy's medical bay had treated 17 minor injuries, 3 cases of species-specific stress reactions, and 1 cadet who had gone into temporary hibernation, an evolutionary response to extreme duress in Fuvian physiology. Professor Krell had filed 6 official reports defending the training program to Academy administrators, who were increasingly concerned about the unorthodox methods. Today, announced Lieutenant Rodriguez as she paced before the mud-splattered, exhausted cadets, we're adding a time pressure element. She gestured to what appeared to be crude projectile weapons laid out on a tarp. These are paintball markers. They fire capsules of colored dye at approximately 90 meters per second. Graf, who had finally mastered the scaling wall by using his teammates as literal stepping stones, grunted. You're going to shoot at us with primitive kinetic weapons? Not me, Rodriguez corrected, that unsettling smile never leaving her face. You're going to shoot at each other while completing the confidence course, in the rain. On cue, the environmental controls activated, and a steady downpour began to fall over the training ground. Several cadets made distressed noises as water sluiced over their various appendages, exoskeletons, and sensory organs. Lieutenant, Professor Krell interjected, his secondary eyes narrowing. Cadet Xylax's species is semi-aquatic. This gives them a distinct advantage. Correct, Rodriguez nodded, just as some species naturally have advantages in different combat environments. The lesson isn't about fairness, Professor, it's about adaptation. She divided the increasingly miserable cadets into 2 teams and explained the rules: complete the course faster than the opposing team while simultaneously trying to tag opponents with paint. Being hit with paint resulted in a 30-second penalty, where the cadet had to remain motionless, extremely vulnerable to additional hits. What followed was a cacophony of shouts, splashes, and the distinctive popping sound of the paintball markers. The cadets, who had barely learned to navigate the obstacles, now had to do so while under fire in the rain as part of a team. Cadet Nixera, to everyone's surprise, proved remarkably adept. Her forearms allowed her to climb while returning fire. Whoa! This is actually fun, she shouted just before taking a paint capsule directly to her central sensory cluster. The blue dye mixed with her naturally blue skin, creating an interesting purple pattern that would take weeks to fully fade. Meanwhile, Tepkal's tentacles, previously a liability on the course, became an asset when wielding multiple paintball markers simultaneously. The methane breather managed to hit 5 opponents in rapid succession before slipping into a mud puddle and becoming thoroughly stuck. Professor Krell watched from beneath a shelter, all 4 eyes tracking the chaos. Improving, he noted with reluctant admiration. Bizarre as this methodology is, it appears to be effective. Rodriguez nodded. Stress inoculation. The body learns what the mind resists. And tomorrow? Krell asked, already dreading the answer. Tomorrow, we take away their breakfast and add sleep deprivation, she replied cheerfully. Standard human training enhancement. 2 weeks into the training regimen, the easy final exam nearly breaks the aliens. The cadets had transformed, not physically, though many sported interesting bruises, scrapes, and, in Cadet Nixera's case, fading purple paint stains, but in how they moved, how they interacted, how they approached problems. They communicated more efficiently, they improvised solutions, they had developed what Lieutenant Rodriguez called tactical awareness, but what Professor Krell privately thought of as perpetual paranoia. Final exam time, Rodriguez announced one morning, her voice particularly cheerful, which the cadets had learned was always a bad sign. Today's exercise is what we humans call a cakewalk. A cakewalk, repeated Cadet Vine, her translator struggling with the idiom. It means easy, clarified Rodriguez. Simple, a breeze. The cadets exchanged glances. After 2 weeks of grueling physical challenges, sleep deprivation, and increasingly complex tactical scenarios, the prospect of something easy was more suspicious than reassuring. The task is straightforward, continued Rodriguez, gesturing to a simple flag planted on a small hill about a kilometer away. Retrieve the flag, bring it back here. You have 1 hour. You'll work as a single unit, all 23 of you. Professor Krell's primary eyes narrowed. That's it? No additional parameters? None whatsoever, Rodriguez replied with a smile that should have triggered every danger sensor in the known galaxy. The cadets, understandably wary, spent 15 minutes planning their approach. They established a formation, assigned roles based on species capabilities, and even designated 2 cadets to remain vigilant for unexpected variables, a term they'd adopted from Lieutenant Rodriguez. Finally, they set out toward the hill. They made it exactly 127 m before the first explosion sent mud spraying in all directions. Landmines, shrieked Cadet Tepkel, all 6 tentacles flailing in panic. Simulated landmines, corrected Rodriguez through their comm units. Just pressure plates releasing compressed air and mud. Perfectly safe, unless you count the psychological impact. More mines detonated as they advanced. Then came the drone swarms, harmless but disorienting, followed by sudden shifts in the terrain itself as hidden hydraulics rearranged the battlefield. Environmental controls cycled rapidly between sweltering heat and bone-chilling cold. Audio emitters blasted disorienting sounds at random intervals. This is her idea of easy, he gasped Grath, his stone-like exterior now completely caked in mud as he pulled Nixera from a sudden sinkhole. Human perspective, panted Nixera, using all 4 arms to climb onto solid ground. Remember the history briefing, their planet tried to kill them for millions of years before they even developed space travel. Despite everything, the cadets pressed on. They adapted, they compensated for injuries, they reorganized when their original plan collapsed. When communications were jammed halfway through, they switched to visual signals developed during previous exercises. 58 minutes into the challenge, a mud-covered, exhausted but triumphant Cadet Vine handed the flag to Lieutenant Rodriguez. Congratulations, said Rodriguez, looking genuinely impressed. You've just completed what Earth's special forces consider a basic field evaluation. Basic, croaked Professor Krell, whose normally immaculate exoskeleton was now unrecognizable beneath layers of grime. Oh, yes, nodded Rodriguez, for the advanced version, we'd have done it at night in the rain with live-fire exercises. The graduation ceremony for advanced combat tactics and survival bore little resemblance to traditional Confederation military proceedings. Instead of pristine uniforms and formal formations, 23 cadets stood at attention in the Academy's Grand Hall wearing battle-stained training gear. Their various species' anatomies displayed everything from healing lacerations to molting exoskeletons to chromatophores still cycling through stress patterns. Academy Director F.O. Levax, a dignified centurion with elaborately patterned scales that signified their high rank, surveyed the unusual assembly with barely concealed confusion. Professor Krell, they said quietly, is this display meant to be symbolic? Not symbolic, Director. Authentic, replied Krell, whose own appearance had changed subtly over the 3-week course. His normally rigid posture had relaxed into something more adaptable, and his secondary eyes now moved in constant scanning patterns, a new habit developed during Rodriguez's surprise tactical drills. Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward, her human frame appearing deceptively fragile next to the various alien physiologies, yet not a single cadet regarded her with the dismissive curiosity they had shown on that first day. Now, they watched her with the alert respect normally reserved for apex predators.
Cadets, she announced, her voice carrying the same easy authority it had when ordering them through mud pits, you've completed a modified version of Earth Defense Force basic tactical training.
Some of you excelled, some of you merely survived, all of you learned. She paced before them, hands clasped behind her back. You came into this course as individual specialists, each relying on your species' natural advantages and technological crutches. You're leaving as something more, adaptable combatants who can function when everything goes wrong. Cadet Nixera stepped forward.
The Thrillian's blue skin now bore several scars that she had declined to have cosmetically removed.
Lieutenant Rodriguez, on behalf of the class, I would like to present something.
She handed over a crude object that appeared to have been assembled from various materials scavenged from the training grounds, a small replica of the final exam's flag mounted on a